Gang, you do not want to miss this episode of the Futurecast because I'm talking about the best young wide receivers in all of fantasy football. The type of players that take your pretenders and turn those bad boys into contenders. And if you're new around here, let me educate you. I'm the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. The most genuine host on planet Earth and the one true authentic fantasy football analyst. That's right. It's your boy, Matty Kiwoom. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of the Futurecast. You can find me on X at Matty Kiwoom. Everybody, while you're here, make sure you are subscribed to the Player Profiler YouTube channel. Get ready to absolutely demolish that like button. And while you're in the comments, let me know who is your favorite young wide receiver, because today on the latest episode of the Futurecast, I'm talking about my wide receiver cornerstone rankings. These pass catchers were all drafted over the last 3 years, so 2023, 2024, and this past year, 2025 NFL draft. I did my cornerstone running back rankings on the last episode. You can find that here at the Player Profiler YouTube channel. But folks, without further ado, let's talk about the best young wide receivers in all of fantasy football. So how this is going to go down, I'm going to count down from 20 all the way to 1. So you're going to have to stick around throughout the entire video to find out who is atop my cornerstone rankings, who is the best young wide receiver in fantasy football. So I'm going to start with number 20. Let's get into it. Luther Burden III. Luther Burden is 6 feet, 206 pounds. Ran a 4.41 140, 89th percentile burst score. He finished in the 74th percentile of the college dominator rating, a 26.9% college target share, and broke out at age 18. So he was in the 94th percentile for breakout age. His best comparable player at PlayerProfiler.com, Sammy Watkins. The Chicago Bears, they selected Burden with the 7th pick in the second round. Burden, coming out of 2023, was looked at as one of the best, maybe most productive wide receivers in all of college football. And remember the 23 season. We're going to be talking about a lot of those receivers on this very episode. But last year, he took a little bit of a downswing. Now, there was a little bit of injury, a little bit of QB injury, maybe a little Missouri Tiger football injury. I don't know. There was a lot going on in Mizzou, and a lot of the players underperformed. But last year, 61 catches on 80 targets, 676 receiving yards, a 19.8% target share, and had 6 receiving touchdowns. There are some red flags in the profile, including that dip in production. That's why he was not a first-round pick, taken the 7th pick in the second round. Looking at a situation for Chicago, love the quarterback, love the offensive guru, the genius behind the offense this year, new head coach Ben Johnson. What I don't love about Burden is where he's probably going to start in terms of the pass catching hierarchy. Where is he going to fall in terms of touches on this offense? Because DJ Moore, richest contract in franchise history, still there. Rome Odunze, top 10 pick just a year ago, still there. Colston Loveland, tight end selected in the first round this year, still there, or arriving there with Burden. Then DeAndre Swift. I mean, Cole Kmet. There's a lot going on for this Bears team. And even though I like the profile, even though I like the skill set, despite some of the red flags, I have to put him at number 20 just because at this point, I don't know how it's going to look. At playerprofile.com, you can go over there and check out our dynasty rankings. We got Luther Burden comes in at number 51 overall wide receiver rankings. But he's number 20 in my cornerstone rankings. Let's go to number 19. Tre Harris, another rookie. This player comes from the Los Angeles Chargers, the Superchargers. Go Chargers, go. Go Chargers, go. 6'2", 205 pounds. He ran a 4.5 440, 66th percentile speed score, 81st percentile burst score, and has a pretty good catch radius. It is above average coming into this year. 35.8% college dominate rate. That's 72nd percentile, 83rd percentile college target share, and he broke out at age 20, right at the 50th percentile. Last year, he did get injured at Ole Miss, but despite only playing 9 games, 79 targets, 60 catches, 1,030 receiving yards, had an 18.2% target share, and had 7 touchdowns. That was good enough for him to be the 23rd pick in the second round by the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, you look at his best comparable player, Michael Gallup, isn't the most exciting. But when you see kind of the production in the limited games, you see the size, you see the burst, you can see where Tre Harris is going to find a ton of success at the NFL level. He comes in at number 19 for me because, again, it's tough to see how he is going to play out in terms of the pass catching hierarchy. McConkey had a phenomenal rookie campaign. He projects to be the number 1 wide receiver. They're going to run the ball no less than 750,000 times with Amari and Hampton in the backfield. Then Quentin Johnston. Is there any Quentin Johnston truthers out there? I don't know. So I like the player. I do think there's a bit of a ceiling. Potentially a ceiling to be higher than 19 in my Cornerstone rankings, but the floor is quite low. The floor for Tre Harris is low. So that's why he finished as number 19 in my rankings at the PlayerProfiler.com's Dynasty rankings, though. You can find Tre Harris coming in at 42 overall. Now, let's get into number 18, another rookie from this class, kind of a theme of my Cornerstone rankings, Jayden Higgins. Jayden Higgins, 6'4", 214 pounds, selected with the second pick in the second round by the Houston Texans. Had a 74th percentile 40-yard dash, 94th percentile speed score, 87th percentile burst score. Not so agile with 11.33. That's 41st percentile. Great catch radius. When you see that frame, 6'4", 215 pounds, it's coming with a good catch radius in 94th percentile. 37.2% college dominator rating, 31.4% college target share. That's 93rd percentile, everybody. And he broke out at age 19, 71st percentile. So we like a lot of the metrics in terms of what translates when we're talking about NFL prospects. And the best comparable player on Player Profile is exciting, Allen Robinson, a fantasy darling for many years for a number of teams. In 2024, Jayden Higgins had 138 targets at Iowa State. Not too shabby. Caught 87 of them for 1,183 receiving yards, a 29.4% college target share, which again is pretty good. Jalen Noel on the squad, and he caught 9 touchdowns for the Cyclones. But the reason he has to come in all the way at number 18 is not because I dislike the player. I do like the player. The situation, again, we're looking at this rookie class a little bit lackluster as we came into the class. The draft capital's there for some. I'm going over pretty much all of them now. But you look at the targets, you look at who's they're going to be sharing the field with. It's tough to see Jayden Higgins being relied upon in a massive way. Will he get red zone targets? Yeah. This is a guy that could catch 5 or 6 touchdowns. But with Nico Collins still around, they brought in Christian Kirk, which I know I'm not saying Christian Kirk is still got a ton, but they brought him in. He's going to have a veteran role to start. And then, of course, Jalen Noel still there, his teammate. Jalen Noel can kind of win a lot and be QB friendly. So where will CJ Stroud go with the ball? Will it go Jayden Higgins' way? I hope so. I like the talent. But again, the situation is tough. That's why I have him ranked at 18. And that is also why you can find Jayden Higgins ranked at playerprofiler.com. Dynasty rankings at wide receiver 45. So let's keep the train moving. Someone that I've been very excited about throughout the entire draft process. I would go to say I am the guy when it comes to this player. I was probably the highest on this player going into draft season. He happened to go to my favorite team. So if you know me, you know who I'm talking about. So surprise, folks, but I'm going with Kyle Williams coming in at number 17. Drafted, like I said, by the New England Patriots, 5'11", 190 pounds, 4.40 40-yard dash, 91st percentile. Not the best speed score at 68th percentile, not the best burst score, 51st percentile, but a guy that really can separate, I believe, at the NFL level. College dominator rating, 37.9%, 78th percentile, 26.1% college target share at 77th percentile, broke out at age 19, 86th percentile. I like all those. That's nice. Rashad Bateman is the best comparable player on the Player Profiler website. And like I said, drafted by the New England Patriots with the 5th pick in the 3rd round. Pretty surprising draft capital. A lot to be said on how the new regime, Mike Vrabel and company, values a player like Kyle Williams, a team that was starved for receivers that could separate last year. At Washington State, however, 103 targets, caught 70 of them, 1,198 receiving yards, had a 25.8% college target share last year, and had 14 receiving touchdowns. It's good year for Kyle Williams, and the reason why he's ranked higher than some of these other guys who may possess more talent, may have come with better draft capital, is the path to a metric ton of targets. Stephon Diggs was brought in to be the wide receiver 1. Pop Douglas has been okay. But Drake May, going into his 2nd year, needs to build. He needs to have a more prolific year. They're going to depend on him to throw the ball a lot in this Josh McDaniels offense. And Stephon Diggs looks like the wide receiver 1, but after that, it's wide open. Who's going to get the 2nd most targets on this team? Kyle Williams could be that guy. And if there is injury to Stephon Diggs, which, I mean, come on, Stephon Diggs is over the age apex. He's over 30 years old. He's coming off of a catastrophic knee injury, knee injury last year for the Texans. At almost 32 years old, you can't depend on a full season from Stephon Diggs. I like the path to relevancy. I like the path to a lot of targets for Kyle Williams. That's why he comes in at number 17 for me in my Cornerstone rankings. If you look at Player Profiler's Dynasty rankings, 53rd overall wide receiver. So pretty good, right in that same range as the other guys. So Kyle Williams coming in at number 17. Let's get to number 16. My man, another former favorite of mine. We're going to go with Jayden Reed. Jayden Reed was drafted all the way back in 2023. 5'11", 191 pounds, 4.45 coming out of college. Had a good, decent speed score. Wasn't super bursty. Best comparable player is Stephon Diggs. He was pretty dominant in college, 72nd percentile, 73rd percentile college target share, and he broke out early, 18 years of age, 98th percentile. Last year for the Green Bay Packers, he had a pretty good year, not great year, down year. If you look at some numbers from the year before, better numbers when you look at others. But again, comes with that draft capital, picked with 19th pick in the 2nd round back in 2023. But last year, 75 targets, 55 receptions, 857 receiving yards, had 680 air yards, and had 6 touchdowns. He was wide receiver 38 on a points per game basis. Did play in all 17 games, though. So he was wide receiver 29 overall. Looking forward, though, there's a huge monkey wrench that was just thrown into the pass catching hierarchy for this team. And he goes by the name of Matthew Golden, player I will be talking about later in this episode. I don't see a path to Jayden Reed becoming the number 1 target getter for this team. They're going to run the ball with Josh Jacobs. They showed that last year. They're going to throw the ball to Tucker Kraft. They're going to get all the wide receivers involved at different points of the game. And Jayden Reed's going to have his role. They like to do the end around thing. They like to roll some of those, some looks to him in the screen game, get him, open, kind of with the ball in his hands, let him make some moves. But Matthew Golden taken in the 1st round, we're going to talk about him. This is going to be a big threat to the ceiling of Jayden Reed. That's why at playerprofile.com right now, wide receiver 36 overall. And that's why he's wide receiver 16 for me in my rankings. Now, I'm going to get to wide receiver 15. I'm going to say this ahead of time. People are going to get mad. People are going to be mad about this, but it is what it is. We'll get into why this guy falls all the way down to 15 for me in my rankings. At number 15, Rashee Rice, receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. 6 feet, 200 pounds. Pretty good 40-yard dash speed score. He was very bursty coming out of SMU. Best comparable player, Victor Cruz at PlayerProfiler.com. He was above average college dominator. Huge target share, 33.2% at SMU. Broke out at 20 years old, so right around the 50th percentile. Now, back in 2023, the Chiefs went ahead and selected Rice with the 24th pick in the second round. In 2023, he went on to have a pretty monster season, finished as wide receiver 28 on a points per game basis, picked up exactly where he left off in 2024. But there were some massive red flags. But let's talk about that 2024 season. In just 4 games, 29 targets, 24 receptions, 288 receiving yards, had 2 touchdowns, 16.2 fantasy points per game in those 4 contests. But let's talk about the red flags and the reason why he comes in at wide receiver 15 for me in my Cornerstone rankings. He's in trouble with the law. Got a pretty significant penalty from the state of Texas for his incident behind a vehicle, his Fast and the Furious mishap in Texas. 30 days in jail, but it can be served over the next 5 years. Either way, it is going to come with a suspension from the NFL. Could be as early as this year. On top of all that, he's rehabbing from a torn knee. So, again, I am the king of bro science. I'm the most authentic, the one true authentic fantasy football host. So I will say it like it is. I do believe in bro science. It's not always about the analytics, not always about the stats. Sometimes it's about what you see and what you believe to be true about sports. And what I believe to be true is dependability is the best ability, especially for a team who has Super Bowl aspirations like the Chiefs. You leave the window open. And a guy like Xavier Worthy, who we'll talk about, a pro like Travis Kelce to emerge, or maybe a Jalen Royals, a guy drafted this year, or Hollywood Brown. There's a lot of opportunities to be seized with Rashee Rice being on the shelf, and when he returns, will he get all the opportunities that he has been awarded at so far in his career? I don't believe so. So that is why he's at 15 for me. Now, he comes back, proves me wrong. I won't hate again. This is the last year I am going to resist Rashee Rice. After that, I'll have to pick up my ball and go home and get over it. Because if he throws it back in my face this year, after all the red flags, comes back, he is Pat Mahomes' number 1 guy, the apple of his eye, the apple of Kermit's eye, then I'll have to recalibrate. But until then, he's my number 15 wide receiver in my receiving ranks. I like his teammate more, someone that we'll talk about here in a little bit, although his ranking's still high at Player Profiler's Dynasty wide receiver rankings, coming in at wide receiver 18. I'm going to keep the train moving here with my number 14 wide receiver, Emeka Egbuka. Emeka Egbuka plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 6'1", 202 pounds, 4'5", 40, 98.5 percentile speed score at 68th percentile. Dominant at Ohio State. Had a pretty good college target share of 24.9%, and had a 67th percentile breakout score. Was drafted in the first round by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a player I have been a fan of for a long time at Ohio State. He's had 2 seasons of which he racked up over 1,000 yards, one being last year. 109 targets, 81 catches, 1,011 receiving yards, had a 24% target share, and 10 receiving touchdowns for the Buckeyes. He will step into a role with a lot of ceiling for the Tampa Bay Bucks. Best comparable player, Jeremy Maclin. If you're old like me, you remember some of the glory days of Jeremy Maclin. Maclin was a former, stud in fantasy. We're talking about a top 24 guy, top 10 guy at one point in his career. So the player comparable, for you youngins, don't get discouraged by the best comparable player. Maclin used to ball the F out, and so can Emeka Egbuka in the role that he's going to be awarded early on. Chris Godwin's still coming back from that awful ankle injury. Dangler, didn't like those, hate seeing those. But he's still recovering. He's not practicing yet. And Emeka Egbuka is going to take that role, and he may not let it go. Godwin's going to get back to some sort of a role. And that's why Emeka Egbuka is not higher in my list. But early on, we're looking for. There's a great chance that Emeka Egbuka uses the skill sets. Separation gets his the skills that will make him a really good slot wide receiver for the Bucs for Baker Mayfield. This is the reason why I like Emeka Egbuka. I got him ranked as my 14th wide receiver. And at playerprofiler.com, we're checking out the wide receiver dynasty rankings. Emeka Egbuka comes in at wide receiver 32. Let's move on to my wide receiver 13, Matthew Golden. We talked about his teammate, Jayden Reed. Now it's time to get into Matthew Golden. Matthew Golden was drafted from the University of Texas this year by the Green Bay Packers. 5'11", 191 pounds, burner, 4.29, 99th percentile 40-yard dash, 91st percentile speed score. Now, he wasn't all that dominant at Texas, didn't have a massive target share, and didn't break out early. But that speed and kind of what came on late for the Longhorns is, I believe, the reason why the Green Bay Packers took him with the 23rd pick in the first round. Like I mentioned, not a ton of surface stats, 86 targets, caught 58 of them for 987 receiving yards, only a 15.9% college target share, and had 9 receiving touchdowns. But when push came to shove and the Longhorns needed first downs and needed production, Matthew Golden was the go-to guy for this offense for Quinn Ewers. And steps into a role where he could be the number one guy immediately for Jordan Love and for this Packers offense. He's going to bring 99th percentile speed. He's a straight line burner, but I do believe he has a skill set to separate late, to really be that downfield connection with a quarterback that has a live arm like Jordan Love. So Matthew Golden's ceiling is high. Draft capital is there. Confidence is all there for Matthew Golden. Skill set translates well. And again, this team has been needing a number one wide receiver. Josh Jacobs, who is their most accomplished offensive weapon, said publicly that this team is searching for its wide receiver one in the offseason, whether it be by trade or draft. He didn't specify, but they didn't trade for anybody. They just drafted this kid with the 23rd overall pick. Sky's the limit for the speedster. He comes in at wide receiver 27 on the Player Profiler Dynasty ranks, but he's wide receiver 13 for me in my top 20 Cornerstone rankings. Let's keep it going, shall we, folks? I want to talk about the number 12. We're getting into the top 12 for my Cornerstone rankings. It is Jordan Addison, wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings, 5'11", 173 pounds. 4.49 40-yard dash. Wasn't all that impressive in terms of speed score, burst score, agility score coming out of college. Best comparable player, Deontay Johnson. But he did break out early at Pitt and then continued his production over at the USC Trojans. Broke out at age 18, 96th percentile. Last year for the Vikings, 15 games played. He had 99 targets, 63 receptions, 875 receiving yards, had 9 touchdowns, 14.2 fantasy points per game. That was good for wide receiver 22. Played in enough games, 15 games played, so it bumped it up a little bit. Wide receiver 21. There are some standouts in terms of his analytical profile. We know his ability to get open deep. We know his ability to convert and to score and to take the ball to the hizzy. 2 years in the NFL, 19 touchdowns. Not too shabby. The reason why he hasn't over some of these other names that I'm going to get into, that's why he's just into my top 12. New quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, even though they were seeing some exciting plays at training camp early. Don't know exactly how he is going to translate at the NFL level. There's still a lot to be proven out of his quarterback position. And he's sharing the field with Justin Jefferson. There's the number one target getter. Isn't going to be Jordan Jefferson. TJ Hawkinson's there. Aaron Jones was brought back. There are other players now. Do I believe that there's a low floor in Addison? No. But I do see a ceiling of wide receiver 22, what he had last year, this year, given the uncertainties, the red flags, and what he could see in terms of targets overall. And if that touchdown number goes to 5, just based on luck, bad luck that we all see in fantasy, I think Jordan Addison could suffer a little bit. Still like the player, though. I got him at wide receiver 12 in my Cornerstone ranking, so I do like him. He does rank quite highly inside our top 30 at Player Profiler Dynasty ranks, wide receiver 28. So let's keep it going. Wide receiver 11, Zay Flowers from the Baltimore Ravens, 5'9", 182 pounds, burner speed, 4.42, coming out of Boston College. Wasn't super good. Didn't have a lot of burst coming out of college. Didn't have a big catch radius. Like 5'9", 182 pounds. We're not expecting it, but had enough production in college and was skilled enough to be the 22nd overall pick for the Ravens back in 2023. Best comparable player, T.Y. Hilton. Pretty good comparison. Encouraging comparison. And we've seen the production go up from year 1 to year 2. It's something I love to see. And you will notice a lot of that. I like to see proven talent. If you could prove on the NFL gridiron, you will get a little bump in my Cornerstone rankings. That's why maybe some of you are like saying, what? What do you mean? Zay Flowers at 11? Yeah, Zay Flowers has been good in his first 2 years in the pros, and he's just gotten better. Last year, 116 targets, 74 receptions, 1,059 receiving yards, added 4 receiving touchdowns. He was wide receiver 32 on a points per game basis, but he was a top 25 receiver overall because he did play in 17 total games last year. And what I really like about this kid, I mean, he can separate. He's 9th in target separation score at PlayerProfiler.com, and he was very, very explosive. 4th amongst qualified wide receivers in explosive rating. This guy has a lot of ceiling left in his game, and we've already seen him eclipse 1,000 yards. Now, the reason why he's not going to be over some of the other names, they did bring in DeAndre Hopkins. I don't know if that's going to be a massive issue. But it could be. It could keep him at the 100, 110 targets and not propel him into that 120, 125 range. That would really make him a fantasy stud. But I still like the player, and we like him at Player Profiler. He's wide receiver 23 in the Player Profiler Dynasty rankings. At wide receiver 11 in my Cornerstone rankings, let's talk about Xavier Worthy. I talked about his teammate Rashee Rice, but I want to talk about Xavier Worthy and why I have him ranked over Rashee Rice. Let's start with his immeasurables. 5'11", 165 pounds, but an absolute speed demon. 4.21 40-yard dash, 100th percentile, fastest 40-yard dash in recorded human history. 78th percentile speed score and a 96th percentile burst score. And despite the frame, pretty great catch radius, 91st percentile. Catch radius broke out early at Texas, 97th percentile. 27.8% college target share was 84th percentile, and he was good enough for the Kansas City Chiefs to trade up and select him with the 28th overall pick in the 2024 draft. And in his rookie year, 98 targets, 59 receptions, 638 receiving yards, 6 receiving touchdowns. But the reason that I was so excited, and the reason why I am very excited about Xavier Worthy, it was just the rocket ship that he was on. It wasn't always pretty to start, but man, did it catch fire, and it caught speed, much like, him, 4.21 speed. And he was 10th amongst qualified wide receivers last year in target separation. So we know he's getting that push, that boost. But I talked about the rocket ship that he was on last year. Of course, Rashee Rice gets hurt. Still takes him a little bit of time to get going. But from week 15 on, we saw him really come onto the scene. Now, I know I'm talking about playoffs. We don't get playoff stats in fantasy football, but this is why Patrick Mahomes is going to just continue to build his rapport, his relationship with this player. From week 15 on, like I said, as the season went on, it got hotter and hotter. 11 targets, 9 targets, 6 targets, 7 targets, 8 targets in the Super Bowl with big games, touchdowns, 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl, touchdown in the AFC Championship game, touchdown in week 16, touchdown in week 17 when they needed it. I mean, this guy was a producer, a dependable receiver for Patrick Mahomes and this Kansas City offense. And going into year 2, I think he just stays on that rocket ship, man. And we see the speedy receiver just continue to take off. That's why I have him ranked as my 11th highest or 10th highest receiver in this year's rankings at Player Profiler, wide receiver 20 overall in Dynasty. So we're high on him here at Player Profile, and I'm high on him in my Cornerstone rankings. The next guy I'm going to talk about, wide receiver 9. We're getting inside the top 10, everybody. Ladd McConkey for the Los Angeles Superchargers. Ladd McConkey had a great rookie year. But let's talk about the measurables. 6 feet, 186 pounds, 4.39 speed, good speed score, decent burst score, 60th percentile. And best comparable player at playerprofiler.com, Garrett Wilson, and you can't teach that. The Chargers took him with the second overall pick in round number 2, traded up with the New England Patriots to make it. Yeah, that hurts. As a Patriots fan, it absolutely hurts. I mentioned a good rookie campaign for McConkey, 112 targets, 82 receptions, 1,149 receiving yards, added 7 tutties, finished with 15.1 fantasy points per game. He was wide receiver 12 overall last year, and he pops in a number of metrics that you can check out at playerprofiler.com. He was 6th in EPA. He was 8th in QB rating per target, and he was really good versus man coverage. I mean, he got open. He had at a 41% clip versus man coverage, 7th highest amongst qualified wide receivers, and they threw to him 33.6% of the time in man coverage. That's the 6th highest. He was very reliable for Justin Herbert, and that ain't going to change. Tre Harris is going to make the offense more dynamic, but he's not going to cut into Ladd McConkey's production this year or going forward. That's why he is inside my top 10 at wide receiver 9 in my Cornerstone rankings, and he's ranked pretty highly at playerprofiler.com. We got him ranked at wide receiver 10 in Dynasty rankings. So Ladd McConkey is my number 9 receiver in Cornerstone, number 10 overall at Player Profiler. A lot to be excited about. My number 8 receiver in my Cornerstone rankings, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, 6 feet, 196 pounds. Best comparable player is Doug Baldwin, mainly due to that agility score, 99th percentile agility, 76th percentile catch radius. Ohio State Buckeye. We saw a lot of production while he was at OSU, enough so that the Seattle Seahawks took him with the 20th pick overall in 2023. Wasn't super exciting in his rookie year, but bounced back in a massive way for the Seahawks. 137 targets, 100 receptions. Our first guy on the list with 100 receptions in a year. 1,130 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, 14.9 fantasy points per game. He finished as wide receiver 9 last year. Could make the argument that he should be higher in my ranks, should be a little bit higher than wide receiver 8, but the reason why he's not, the Seahawks brought in Cooper Kupp. Now, Cooper Kupp's old. Is he dust? I don't think he's dust. I think he's good enough to be a thorn in the side of Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Do I think he's going to be the number 1 target getter? I wouldn't bet on it. But new quarterback Sam Darnold, we've seen mega production out of Cooper Kupp in the past. He's got the grunge haircut, returning home to the Pacific Northwest to Seattle. So I think that kind of keeps the target range for Jaxon Smith-Njigba lower than it was last year. If Cooper Kupp's healthy, we could see that target share dip from 137 down to 118, 120. Still good. Still going to see a lot of production from JSN. Maybe see better efficiency with the new role, more of an outside threat from Jaxon Smith-Njigba, not so much the slot guy. Maybe a little bit more is that reserved for Cooper Kupp. So I still believe in him. Still think he's a good fantasy player. But I got him at number 8 in my Cornerstone rankings. And at playerprofiler.com, wide receiver 12 in Dynasty. Let's keep it moving. We're moving inside the top 7, folks. Tetairoa McMillan, everybody. Tetairoa McMillan was drafted in 2025. 6'4", 220 pounds. Best comparable player at playerprofiler.com, Drake London. We love that 81st percentile speed score. All the college metrics really do pop. 91st percentile college dominator rating, 92nd percentile college target share, and he broke out early, age 19, so 79th percentile there. He was really, really good for Arizona. So good, in fact, that the Carolina Panthers took him with the 8th overall pick in this year's draft to be the number 1 target getter for Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers. In 2024 at Arizona, 84 receptions on 135 targets, had 1,319 receiving yards, 30.9% target share, 8 receiving touchdowns. He was a monster for this offense, and he will step into a role in which he has the capabilities of being an absolute monster for the Carolina Panthers. You can't rule out 120 targets. And for this type of player, best comparable player, Drake London, the sky's the limit. And that's why I had to put him inside my top 7. That's why I got him at wide receiver 7 in my Cornerstone rankings. PlayerProfiler.com, wide receiver 15 in Dynasty. So there's a lot to be excited about when it comes to Tetairoa McMillan. Let's get into number 6, Rome Odunze. 6'3", 212-pound receiver for the Chicago Bears. I mean, his player profile page just lights it up in terms of athleticism. 80th percentile 40-yard dash, 94th percentile speed score, 82nd percentile burst score, 86th percentile agility score, 97th percentile catch radius. This guy's a stud, and he broke out early. Age 19 at Washington, 84th percentile. Best comparable player, Justin Jefferson. Now, with all that being said, a bit of a lackluster year in his rookie year. Drafted 9th overall, so the expectations were high for Rome Odunze, but he did see 101 targets, only caught 54 of them. Product of the offense, I think, more than product of the player and the skill set and what he possesses. So I think I think there's a lot more room there. Okay, but we'll keep going. 734 receiving yards, had 3 touchdowns, only scored 8.5 fantasy points per game. Wide receiver 49. But Ben Johnson is at the helm. We talked about it briefly with Luther Burden earlier in the show. We're going to talk about it again. Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, passing game evolution, big step up, a lot of pass attempts, a lot of fast pace. We can expect a lot of big things. And we saw it in flashes with Rome Odunze. Despite the lack of surface stats, we saw a lot of flashes of just what this guy, the skill set that he possesses. And again, best comparable player on the website is Justin Jefferson for a dang reason. Wide receiver 19 on the Dynasty rankings. Wide receiver 6 for me in my Cornerstone rankings. Have a lot of love for Rome Odunze, one of my favorite draft prospects coming out in 2024. I'm expecting a massive jump in production. I'm expecting another 100-target season, better production in terms of catches, more receiving yards, more touchdowns. Big year in store for Rome Odunze. We're about to get into the top 5, folks, so you're going to want to stick around after these messages.
The world-famous Draft Kit is live, and it is this signature bit of content that we create every year to help you dominate your fantasy league. The most in-depth team previews you'll find anywhere, including signature trends and a lot of key stats on individual teams. Also, a 300-player cheat sheet for best ball, for seasonal leagues, individual cheat sheets from the top analysts here at Player Profiler. There's also video analysis and written analysis from some of the top minds in the industry. And we have all these new features like a Rate My Team feature, plug in your roster, and our AI tools automatically generate a draft score, as well as a whole commissioner guide. You have to subscribe to it to believe it. PlayerProfiler.com/draftkit, PlayerProfiler.com/draftkit. Get it now. Go win.
The one true, authentic fantasy football analyst. That's right. I'm Matty Kuhn, the latest episode of the Futurecast, diving in to my wide receiver Cornerstone rankings. Let's get into number 5, Marvin Harrison Jr., 6'3", 205 pounds, 77th percentile 40-yard dash, 87th percentile burst scores, got that catch radius, 91st percentile. Very dominant at OSU. Very dominant. One of the most I'm not going to do it. 95th percentile college dominator rating, 31.8% college target share. That's 94th percentile. So good that the Arizona Cardinals selected him with the 4th pick in the first round of the 2024 draft. Now, the reason why he ranks ahead of Rome Odunze and others, despite not having a dominant year, despite not really wowing in fantasy football, the Cardinals really didn't do much to bring in competition for touches. He still is in line to be the unequivocal number 1 receiver. Maybe not the number 1 pass catcher, but he's definitely the number 1 wide receiver behind only Trey McBride in terms of the pass catching hierarchy overall. 17 games played last year as a rookie, 116 targets, 62 receptions, 885 receiving yards, had 8 touchdowns, 11.6 fantasy points per game. He was wide receiver 30 with the room to grow. With the expectation of the higher ceiling, it's just tough to It's really just tough to count out Marvin Harrison. It is. There's a scenario where he really has a breakout season and becomes a top 15 overall wide receiver in fantasy, and still a dominant player in Dynasty. And I'm expecting a step up. Best comparable player, AJ Green, is encouraging. This is a guy with an accurate quarterback, a guy with an offense that should move the ball, indoor offense. We like that. So for me, Marvin Harrison, I'm expecting better things, bigger things from Marvin Harrison. That's why I have him ranked as number 5 in my Cornerstone rankings. He is ranked as the wide receiver 16 on the Dynasty ranks of PlayerProfiler.com. Maybe the most surprising guy on the list, but I'm just head over heels for the talent. Travis Hunter. Kind of said Tet McMillan was the number 1 wide receiver because I was kind of being cheeky because, he's a dual threat guy, cornerback and wide receiver. But the Jaguars moved up and paid a king's ransom for this guy for a reason, because they're going to use him on both sides of the ball, specifically a ton at wide receiver. We've seen what he's capable of in college. So let's talk a little bit about one of my favorite players overall in the NFL, and a guy that I have massive expectation for year 1 as a wide receiver. 6 feet, 188 pounds, 4.39 40-yard dash, which was 94th percentile, 38.8% college dominator rating, 25.9% college target share. Both of those are well above the average. Broke out at age 19, 80th percentile. I mean, this guy's the unicorn. The Jaguars paid so much for them to move up to take him at 2 overall, 2nd overall, and with good reason. Last year, despite playing a ton of cornerback, playing a ton of snaps overall, he was absolutely electric for the Buffalo. 96 receptions on 125 targets, 1,258 receiving yards, 26% college target share, 15 touchdowns. I mean, this guy was a freak, massive. He was just awesome. Best comparable player, Stephon Diggs, is, I mean, if you know me, that's my type of receiver. Those are the receivers I gravitate towards. And you've seen a couple of guys high in my Cornerstone rankings with that comparable player for a reason. And I mean, Todd McShay said he had some of the best hands he's ever seen. This guy's ability to track the ball, obviously, on both sides of the field is phenomenal. And he's just going to... The sky's the limit for this guy. I saw a lot of Justin Jefferson in his game. Stephon Diggs, like I mentioned, best comparable player. This guy has 100 target ceiling as a rookie. And that's despite playing with another guy that we're going to talk about here in a second. So I just have a lot of expectations. I think the ceiling is so high on Travis Hunter. Obviously, I got him ranked as number 4 in my Cornerstone wide receiver rankings. At Player Profile, he's wide receiver 17. So as a collective, pretty high. But I just think there's such a high ceiling, which is crazy because the next guy on the list, number 3, is his teammate, Brian Thomas Jr. Brian Thomas, 6'3", 209 pounds, workout freak, high 90s percentile for 40-yard speed score, burst score, catch radius, freak. Best comparable player, DK Metcalf. Very exciting. 23rd pick of the 2024 draft, and he absolutely did not disappoint his first year in the NFL. 133 targets, 87 receptions, 1,282 receiving yards, 10 touchdowns, 16.7 fantasy points per game. He was wide receiver 4 overall. And he was great in terms of his analytics as well. 8th in yards per route run, 9th amongst qualified wide receivers in yards per team pass attempt, 6th in unrealized air yards. So there was still some meat left on the bone. You could make the argument that he is the number 1 overall player in the wide receiver Cornerstone rankings when you're factoring these last 3 years. But for me, the reason why he's at number 3 is because how high I am on Travis Hunter. So if Travis Hunter's going to be number 4, I can't see Brian Thomas being number 1. But I can still see him being number 3. He's awesome. He was great his rookie year. So I guess I say all this to say, go get Trevor Lawrence, I guess, because I'm high on both of his pass catchers. Obviously, Travis Hunter at number 3 and Brian Thomas at number 4. Now at playerprofile.com, wide receiver 7 in the Dynasty rankings. Let's move on to wide receiver number 2. Have you guessed who it could be? There's only 2 left. You could probably guessed who one of these guys are. Are you right? Number 2 on my Cornerstone rankings is Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua has been phenomenal in the NFL. 6'2", 210 pounds, despite not really being all that athletic, not scoring all that high in terms of 40, speed, score, burst. None of those things are all that great. And his college metrics aren't all that great, except he did break out early. 98th percentile breakout age. Draft capital, put throw to the trash. Doesn't matter anymore. I know 43rd pick in the 5th round in 2023. Doesn't matter. The best comparable player, Terrell Owens. That's exciting. It's almost been as exciting as a production. Massive rookie year, 2023. Last year did deal with some injuries, but despite having some injuries last year, playing in only 11 games, did still see 106 targets, caught 79 of them, 990 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, scoring 18.8 fantasy points per game. That was the second best. But of course, because of the injuries, wide receiver 26th overall. This guy does it every which way you need it to be done. On the surface, in the analytical profile, this guy's a stud. Absolute stud wide receiver. Only reason why he's not number 10. The situation going forward does have some questions to be answered. I'm not concerned really with them because I still believe that Matthew Stafford will have a good season in 2025. But beyond that, how does Sean McVay kind of get into that next iteration? How does he develop that offense post Matthew Stafford? So there are just a little bit of red flags. Just, we're kind of cutting hairs here. We're really cutting it thin, kind of playing a little tough, it's the margins are thin. You talk about my top 2. Puka Nacua is wide receiver number 4 on the Dynasty rankings at Player Profiler. But number 2 in my Cornerstone. Now let's get to my number 1 guy, Malik Nabers. If you know me, if you've been following me around, you know how high I've been on Malik Nabers for a long, long time. Best comparable player, Jamar Chase. Jordan shrug. I don't know. It's pretty great. 6 feet, 200 pounds, athletic, 4.4 40, good speed score, good burst score, good catch radius, absolute monster at LSU. 94th percentile college target share, broke out early, 86th percentile. The Giants took him with the 6th overall pick, so the draft capital is there. And then despite not really having a dependable quarterback in 2024, still had an amazing rookie season. 170 targets. Let me say that again. 170 targets as a rookie. Caught 109 of them for 1,204 receiving yards. 7 touchdowns, 18.2 fantasy points per game. He was wide receiver 6, both on a points per game basis and overall because he played in 15 games. Malik is awesome. He's so good, and he is going to garner so many targets. 170 might not be his most targets that he sees in a single season. I know that sounds crazy, but he might see more targets. They didn't really bring in much competition. But what they did bring in was QB upgrades. Now, despite what you think about the QB room in New York, Brian Daboll is going to have his deepest and most talented QB room he's ever had as the head coach of the Giants. They brought in Jameis Winston, which we all had fun that weekend thinking about the Nabers-Winston connection. They brought in Russell Wilson, and they also used a first-round pick on Jackson Dart. So whoever wins the job is an upgrade from the 2024 quarterback collection that we saw. And if that guy gets hurt, the next guy in line will be the best quarterback that we've seen over these next couple of years. And if he gets hurt, the third quarterback in this room will be the best signal caller that Malik Nabers has ever played with. So with that being the basis, with that being the expectation, with his skill set, how could he not be number 1 in my Cornerstone rankings? I have him as the number 1 wide receiver in my Dynasty rankings. Now, at playerprofiler.com, he is ranked as number 5, still top 5 guy. The expectations are high. But for this player to get 170 targets in his rookie year, for this player to be in an offense that is going to take a step forward because they have invested so much in the quarterback position, the sky is the limit for Malik Nabers. And that's why he is my number 1 wide receiver in my Cornerstone rankings. That's it, folks. That's the show. I'm glad you tuned in to this episode of the Futurecast. Like I said, I am the most genuine host, the one true, authentic fantasy football analyst, the best there is, the best there was. and the best there ever will be. I'm Matty Kiwu. Make sure you subscribe to the Player Profiler YouTube channel. Absolutely smash that like button. Again, get in those comments. Let me know who is your favorite young wide receiver. I'll see you next time, folks. Peace.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.